All right. And hello, everyone. I see Josh Whitehall is already there. Good to see you, brother. And anyone else who wants to get a shout out, we're just going to wait a few minutes to just get a few more folks. Shout out. We're just going to wait a few minutes to just get a few more folks. Okay, looks like we got about 7 people here. So if you want to get a shout out, go ahead and just write something in the chat. Emojis are great, helps the algorithm. If you want to hit like, that'd be awesome. Yeah, so we're just going to do a kind of short review, and I decided that I'm actually going to do a full episode tomorrow about the prophecy from the virtues, because I think it kind of deserves to be its own thing. I also need to listen to, I have to record myself when I channel because I don't really remember it that well. And I was reviewing it earlier and then the day just got away from me. And I actually think it's like a 30-minute recording. So I actually think that there's enough meat in there to have a full show on it. So I'm going to do that tomorrow. But I do a lot of the stuff that's going on with the Shadow Wars right now. And also, just this, ongoing I see in sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, the truth community, right? I don't like to say the truth movement, and just because I don't know, I don't even saying truth community is kind of like, from a strategic point of view, a mistake, because once you start to form any kind of community, anything that's long lasting, it's ripe for infiltration, which it's kind of exactly what's happened. And that's something I really want to talk about. Hey, Brent, how's it going? Hey, Greg, how's it going? I'll just put people's comments up. So Josh Whitehall said, good evening. We got Greg Moulter saying Happy New Year's. Yeah, and Happy New Year's to you too, Greg. And then Brent's here. Hey, Brent, Happy New Year. Brent was one of my past angelic magic students, and we just worked together a bit, and we just have ended up becoming friends. He's actually working on a new theme song for the show, which hopefully will be ready sometime in early 2024. But yeah, so before I launch into this sort of infiltration of the conspiracy theory movement, I just want to take a second and just kind of look back in awe. It was early December, I think, of 2022, when Sam Tripoli saw my channel, which was really the catalyst for massive growth for this channel. Was definitely Sam Tripoli and me going on a show. Just tons of people saw it on that. Since it spread other places, but there's been 4,000 more viewers. I started last January 1st at 1,300 something, and it's now at 5,300 something. And thank you for everyone who's joined. It doesn't cost anything, and it helps me out a ton when I get more subs. It just helps people get out more. I don't know. It helps more people be able to see it when there's more subscribers, and helps the message get out. Let's see here. Randy says the number 8 in the Archangel Uriel will be especially important this year. Happy New Year's, everyone. Yeah, it's very. Oh, Mr. Quantum always has the best questions and requests. And Mr. Quantum, I am going to do that non-duality show here very soon. I just kind of have to be in the right mood for it, because it's a very it's just very different from anything else I talk about on the channel. But getting back to what Randy is saying here, yeah, it's an 8-year. It's also a dragon year in Chinese zodiac. Of course, that's not until I think early February is when it changes officially into the dragon year. But an 8-year is about karma, according to a friend of mine who is a numerology expert. He says an 8-year is a karma year, and so it's a year where you can actually have a lot of things go really well for you. If you've been doing really well in the past 7 prior years, since the 1 year, if you've been doing really well and doing good, by which I mean that you're taking care of yourself and you're also hopefully doing some amount of good in the world, it can be this tremendously powerful year for you where everything just kind of breaks in the right direction and things just skyrocket. And in particular, 8 is also a wealth number. And so an 8-year is great for wealth, but some will have something to get from them, and we'll have to get to that. And it's also a dragon year. Oh, I don't know if we lost video here. let's see, shoot. Oh, it's back. Okay. Lost video there for a second. So it's a dragon year, and dragon years are about also accumulating assets. And so I'm Year of the Dragon. I'm actually going to turn 48 this March. And so it should be especially good for people who are dragons. And it should be good for anyone who has really been doing good the past 7 years. They should do well. And those who have done bad the past 7 years are going to really have that come to them in full payment. I think it's interesting that it's an 8 year, which is a karma year, right before we switch into out of the Kali Yuga and into the intermezzo period between the Kali Yuga and the Dwapara Yuga, you know, where we're in the midst of the phase shift full blown. And so I think it's interesting because the angels have said, and I've mentioned many times in this channel, that a big part of what is happening is it's the end of the Kali Yuga, so all sorts of karmic debts are being cleared. And these are debts not just from this lifetime, but from many, many lifetimes. And you see it in the external world through the mechanism of as above, so below, all the debt that's in nation states, all the debts that's in banks, all the personal debt. There's just all this karmic debt that's being expressed, among other ways, with physical debt. And that also looks like that's going to pop later this year, which is going to mint new millionaires, and it's going to destroy millions of other people. So it's going to be a heck of a year. And while I need to review the prophecy from the virtues before I can release it publicly, just to make sure, I also kind of have to edit some parts out. Some of it was just for my ears, and so I can't just like play my recording. Plus, it's very faint. It's hard to hear. And so I have to listen to it. And like I said at the beginning of the show, when I channel something, I kind of get out of the way. And so I don't retain it very well. And I have to go back and listen to myself channeling in order to hear it. And I will say that they said that this coming year is going to have a tremendous amount of chaos and strife. And that there's, people who are rooted in, faith in the Most High, or who are transcending above, even beyond that, into that non-dual space. People like that, by and large, the vast majority are going to do very well. But society broadly is not that way. And so it's going to be a very dramatic year. It's an election year, and you can feel the tension in the air. You can feel the building, just energies on both sides of this divide that I see, that I call on this channel the Luciferian Malachian divide. Like, it's really coming to a head, and it looks to me like this year is going to be, really, really dynamic and really filled with challenges. There's also going to be incredible opportunities. There's going to be incredible opportunities to make money, to do well in the world. There's going to be all manner of transformation, and there's also going to be a tremendous amount of chaos, and there's going to be a lot of wars, not here in the United States, although there could be conflict, intense conflicts. I think that's likely. I do remember that, there's one thing I can tease is that they said that there'll be more terrorist attacks both before and after the election. That part I remember very distinctly because that was very unsettling. Like here in the United States, we'll see if that happens. I hope that is wrong. Sometimes I get stuff wrong, but that is one of the things they said. And so I already have been telling people for a long, long time, if you have the means, get out of cities. Like for the next few years, things are probably going to be really dicey. And so you owe it to yourself to, where possible, get out of super heavily populated areas, get to places that are reasonable, to the ability that you can do that. And then where you can't, then just know that God has put you there for a reason. And what you need to do then is do the inner work. And that is true across the board. People need to make sure they have food and water and medicine and all that stuff, but you also got to do that inner work. As I've said many times on this channel, in the challenges that are coming, and really next year is, really when we're going to see it. 7 is sort of a number of isolation and the hermit. And so last year was sort of us sort of retreating from the world to some degree. And there was a lot of planning and internal stuff. And you saw a lot of foundational pieces being laid by the power brokers of the world of themes that are going to play out here in 2024. And so the 7-year was sort of more of a setup year, but the 8-year, you know, people are going to settle scores. That's another way you can look at that. It's karmic. It's karma's being wrapped up. And so things are going to be really intense, and not least of all, this election, you know, this thing where it just feels like theater to me more and more. It just feels like theater, just, you know, that it's hard for me to believe that that this is serious, what's happening, in the sense of what they're doing to Trump. Not that I'm saying there's not any kind of seriousness to it. It's just hard to believe that people actually really think that like a Secretary of State in Maine can just unilaterally decide to remove Trump from the ballot, even though I think she's unelected, she's appointed or something. I don't know. Regardless, I'm pretty sure that I'm no constitutional scholar or lawyer, but I don't think the Secretary of State just gets to take the guy off the top of the ballot who's the most popular person running. Boy, is the video cutting in and out, guys? Is the video cutting in and out? Could someone comment down below, because I may need to go ask. My 15-year-old son's on his PS5. He could be stealing bandwidth. Any thoughts on is there any like a lot of lags or skipping or the video going out? Because the video's gone out a couple times for me. Can anyone comment on that? No, it's not going out? Okay, good. Yeah, so this heavy-handed approach to just trying to unilaterally remove Trump from the ballot is just like, it's Malachian clumsiness at its fullest. You can see that it's such a difference between the way Trump comports himself and the way these Malachians are attacking him. It's just so radically different. And at the same time, you can just know that you should not trust this Trump character. Maybe you vote for him strategically, that I can see for sure, and I think it's super justified. I've actually never voted for Trump. I might this election just because I want to rebuke this Biden administration, which to me is probably the second or third worst administration in American history. I have Woodrow Wilson #1 with the bullet because he created the Fed, the income tax, and got us involved in World War I and started the League of Nations. So I have Woodrow Wilson like #1 with the bullet, like by far and away the worst president in American history. But boy, the Biden and/or Obama third term is just unbelievably nightmarish. And so I may very well vote for him. I'm not sure yet. I certainly want him to win if it's down to those two. Of that, I have no question. Last time I voted, I actually did a write-in for the spiritual upliftment of humanity, the restoration of the republic, and the healing of the planet. I literally wrote that in because I just like that election just felt so unbelievably toxic to me. Oregon was going to go 20 points or whatever to Biden, so it didn't matter. And so I just wanted to thank you, Clint. It freezes here and there. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm going to real quick tell my son that he needs to be off that PS5. I'll be right back. Sorry, guys. 1 second. Are you doing something that takes up a lot of bandwidth? Okay. Are you on a phone call? Okay. Well, I guess it's just, you know, in addition to 2023 ending, another thing that's ending, and thanks be to God for this, is Mercury retrograde is ending. Because Mercury retrograde, I don't know about you guys, this has been the worst Mercury retrograde that I can remember in the longest time. I've had other ones where like I was in a worse spot, so it felt worse than this, but this one has been so crazy for miscommunications and so horrible for technology. It's just been absolutely out of hand. And praise be to God, Mercury and Jupiter are both direct. Jupiter just went direct, and now, which means like abundance can flow more, generosity can flow more. You're moving out of that planning stage of how to be magnanimous and generous and also expansive, right? And now you're implementing that. And with Mercury, business and communications and technology should all take a step forward once Mercury goes direct tomorrow. And thank God, because all of those, at least for me, maybe not business, but communication and technology has been an unbridled nightmare. And so I am super grateful that going away. So real quick, I'm going to go through some other things. Mr. Quantum, always with Oops, always with the good stuff. He said they're going to add that Nazi international diagram. I would consider them to be probably lower ebb Luciferian, and they spike down into Malachian at times. The reason I say that is because the tech and spirituality were big with the Nazis. It seems to me like they're the lowest ebb of Luciferian, and they spike down into Malachian evil. But they at least believe in the material advancement of humanity and some other things. They're also eugenical as opposed to just democidal the way the communists are, right? So, yeah, I mean, certainly evil, certainly in the lower sphere of consciousness, no doubt about that. Happy New Year's, G. Well, right back to you, dog. I didn't realize we're doing 90s, early 2000s greetings. Dimension the Dot. I like that name. That's great. Hey, Diana, what's up? Brad and you are watching live. Fantastic. Hi to the Tyans. You guys are amazing. They're very, very special, and Brad's very generous and awesome, cool guy. New Year's is linked to the Star Series. I did not know that. Interesting. Ian, are we in the end times? Well, we're in the apocalypse, which just means the great unveiling, the great revealing. 2024 also, a lot of people who still are stuck in illusion, their illusions are going to shatter. I think that the vaccine damage is going to be indisputable in 2024, and by that I mean the lethality of it. I think, we keep having the sigma deviation events, standard deviation off the norm, dying of young, healthy people. I mean, that's going to wake people up. At some point, the tide turns on that. That's the tricky one for the Luciferians because their fingerprints are all over that. They didn't decide to do it in the sense of they weren't the deciders, and they didn't. I don't think they conceived of it, although perhaps at the lower end of Luciferian, but they certainly executed it, and that's the part that they can't easily remove their fingers. In fact, one of the things I was going to talk about today is that this infiltration of conspiracy theory movements, and it's infiltrated both by Malachian bullshit and also by Luciferian propaganda, right? And the Luciferian propaganda is, I would say, I explain what they talk about all the time, right? That they won't admit they're ruthless. See, that's where they lie. They call themselves white hats in all of their propaganda. And it's usually centered around Trump, right? Or Javier Milei or Maloney or Wilders, right? Like, but especially Trump is for sure the central figure. I saw this very extensive Luciferian propaganda thing that actually had like a weird, what's called servitor attached to it. Like when I was watching it, I realized that a servitor had attached to me, and I like tuned into it. A servitor is a little, best way to describe it is kind of an astral robot. They're kind of like, they have very minimal sentience. They just sort of carry out a task. They're like a little robot that does something in the astral realm for you. To some degree, they can impact the physical world. The thing is that you don't want to really generally have these things just running around too much without like some way of them having some self-destruct component. Because if you forget about them, they can start causing problems if they're around for too long. And so weirdly, there was this servitor that was attached to this propaganda around Trump. And the funny thing is there was a bunch of stuff in there you could verify. Then they just kind of said, oh, I know what you're thinking, Trump and the vaccine. And with a hand wave, they just like said, oh, well, they like put saline in some of the vaccines. So that's good. Let's move on from that topic. And then they went on to Space Force, having everything and all that stuff. And then there was, really interestingly, there was some outright false information in there. And one of the things I've noticed is that Luciferian propaganda always has a narrative it's pushing, and then verifiably true and verifiably, very obviously verifiably false information. And I think that how they've progressed with that is that they're duping the Malachians into thinking that this is a suppression plan when it's actually planting the seeds of the narrative they need to do their coup, right? Because one thing that people may not be aware of is that the 1960s was, to a large degree, socially engineered by the CIA. It started as what appeared to be this thing on the margins of society, and then it moved inward, right? And you see the same PC culture, and with now this woke monstrosity. But now, if you peer on the edges of society, what do you see? You see this QAnon, and these white hats are going to come in and save us, and they're going to get rid of the pedos, and they have all this blackmail information. Oh, let's see. I'm having serious internet issues. Sorry, guys. Like, I just got signed out of Gmail. That's wild. And I was using it for my notes. So, darn it, I totally lost my train there because of this weird problem with Gmail. Oh, well, there go my note. I'll just do it from the top of my head. So they put verifiably false stuff out there, but at the same time, they're prepping this narrative. And so if you look at what's on the peripheries of society, it's clearly some sort of right-wing movement. And there seems to be two brewing. There seems to be a liberty-minded, a truly liberty-minded right-wing movement that I would dub as the Luciferian one. And then there's the Malachians have the plan. And again, the Luciferians are duping them by appearing to push their agenda while the Luciferian agenda is nested inside of the Malachian agenda, and the Malachians are too dumb to see it, right? They just can't quite conceive of that level of duplicity. They literally can't. They're just not that bright. Something about them is quite dull. And so that agenda that they sell to the Malachians says, this is an Operation Trust. We're going to use it to smoke out the patriots. What it's done is it's spread far and wide certain notions that are true, like these Babylonian dark sorcerers. There's these Satanists, I call them the Malachians, that they're out there and that they harm children. And there's this huge problem with trafficking, right? And it just doesn't go away. The whole the Epstein flight log thing, it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back. It keeps coming back. Interestingly, speaking of Luciferian propaganda, a very strange thing happened. Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes, who I showed clips of her on the show before, because of what she was saying was so intriguing and fit so closely with what the angels and the spirits had told me, about that there is this movement in the shadows that is going to subsume the truly darkest part of the elites with a false light darkness, right? It's not even a darkness, it's a false light, which in some ways is worse than a darkness. Like when you're in darkness, you're in darkness. When you're entranced by a false light, it's hard to see that. It's much harder to see that. But it's just this stage of evolution we have to go through. So you can see how on the periphery of society now, there's this right-wing reactionary thing. And one of them is liberty-minded and very often talks about that we need to have all the technology that's being hidden from us needs to come to the fore, right? All the money shenanigans that have been going on needs to come to the fore. Even now, all of a sudden, I can't think of his name, but the new Speaker of the House is talking about a constitutional Congress, which I have very mixed feelings about that, but that is very fascinating. I mean, huge things are afoot. And so are we in the end times? Yes, for the Malachians, but no for the rest of us. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be tremendous, tribulations. Like it is the apocalypse, which just means the great revealing. And there's going to be tons of the great revealing as the Luciferian and Malachian fight is going to come out into the open by this time in 2024. It'll be out in the open, and by 2025, it'll really be, March 21st is when the Luciferians will turn the corner, and then they'll just be running the tables on the Malachians for the next 3 years, basically hunting them down and doing show trials and that sort of thing. So yes, but it's not Armageddon, it's the apocalypse, which is quite different. Yeah, it's moving out of Capricorn and back into Aquarius. It retrogrades in and out a few times, and it's actually right after the election next year that it finally moves into Aquarius permanently, but it retrogrades back into Capricorn, and Capricorn's the lower aspect of Saturn, and Aquarius is the higher aspect of Saturn, or in Western, it's Uranus. I think it's interesting and useful to look at to look at the 7 planets that all the ancients talked about in astrology, I find the outer planets are important and they do make a difference 100%. And I certainly think that it's helped evolve astrology. When I'm looking at planetary influences, if it's the if there's something going on with the signs, I think of the 7 original planets, which is the Vedic point of view. So from the Vedic point of view, Saturn rules both Capricorn and Aquarius, and Pluto's been in Capricorn for a long, long time. I forget how long, I think 20 years. And that 20 years has been really horrific. I mean, it's basically like the second Bush administration on. It's been very heavy, very Malachian, for lack of a better word, kind of in your face Malachian, right? George W. Bush and on. Pretty awful. And so moving out of that is going to definitely bring a very different vibe. And I think it's symbolic of there's all these cycles and cycles within cycles. And as we move, that looks like the camera died. I'm just going to give it a second. As we move out of the age of Pisces from the Western astrology point of view, and as we move out of Kali Yuga, according to Bibadev Mizra's model, which for what it's worth, the angels have confirmed for me is correct, we are leaving Kali Yuga in 2025. And the angels have even given me the date of the spring equinox of 2025. That, which is March 21st of 2025, that implies to me that there's going to be a huge turning of the tables that happens this year in favor of this Luciferian impulse. And that once they have their hands on the power, the lever of power, if they've ever had their hands off it, right? The whole is the military really running things angle is very intriguing and very interesting, and could very well be real. But if it's not that, and it's just that Trump wins next year by March 21st, like there'll be open conflict, right? Like I don't see any way that they can walk back what has happened in this country. I think that the idea of a constitutional Congress instead of a civil war is not a bad idea. I worry about the sheer number of bad actors, and I don't know really how you can have a constitutional Congress without clearing out the rot first. But if you have a clearing out the rot purge, right, which Trump has kind of hinted at this, right, that there would be some kind of like purge of corruption, which one man's purging of corruption, which I of course would agree that it's corruption, is another man's like consolidation of power and coup d'etat and extra constitutional maneuver. I mean, it seems to me like regardless of what happens, that the Constitution to some degree will be subverted. I have more faith that the Luciferian side would put it back into effect. Some people say the Constitution has been suspended since, I forget what the date is, 1897 or whatever it was, when they had the Organic Act and the Washington, D.C. was founded. So I think us moving into Aquarius is emblematic of this move out of this lower aspect of Saturn into this higher, more technological, more evolutionary impulse, and just really Capricorn to Aquarius is really the story of moving from Moloch to Lucifer in terms of energy. And then you get Pisces after that, right? Now keep in mind, the great year moves retrograde. We're moving from Pisces into Aquarius in terms of the great year, where a planet's moving in terms of like the center of the galaxy. But from our point of view, Pluto is retrograding back and forth between Capricorn and into Aquarius here in this next year. So it's interesting that we're moving into Aquarius from both sides, from the great year point of view, but also in a much smaller cycle here with Pluto moving into Aquarius. And it means transformation. Pluto is transformation and alchemy. And so it means that we're transforming into this more Aquarian energy, which is just more egalitarian, more liberty-minded. I mean, it's very much like the center part of the diagram, for the Luciferian impulse, and even the higher end of the Luciferian impulse, the building up the quality of life for humanity. That side of things is also represented there. All right, so then Josh says, it was a little dicey for a couple of seconds, but fine now. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not sure what's going on. Well, I mean, I guess I do. It's Mercury retrograde. A little lag, but not bad. Just audio, video desync, audio steady though. Okay, it freezes here and there. All right. Yep. All right. Greetings, fellow Oregonian. Oh, hey, Alex Morningstar. Yes, I am also in Oregon. I don't know where you are, but that's funny. That's a funny last name you have, actually, given I was just talking about Lucifer. Much love from the homestead, y'all. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, Ryan. Yeah, boy, it's getting close for East Coasters, 15 minutes away. Do you think Jesus will return? And if so, when? Yeah, you know, I'm not sure whether I think that Jesus comes back like an avatar form, or whether Jesus comes back in spirit form, but can like interact with the world, you know, appears over the world, sort of like he did after, you know, after he died. Like they saw him, the boulder was rolled away, and then they saw him a few days later, and he was sort of a spirit at that point, right? I don't know whether he would come in that form, but it would still impact the world in some kind of way, or whether it means that the consciousness, the Christ consciousness, will be coming back into the world, and that'll be part of what transforms things. As to when this happens, for what it's worth, Vibhu Dev Misra, in the interview with him, which his book is out, by the way. I'm going to have him on here very soon, but his book is out on Amazon. I should put up a link for it. I will do that here soon. I meant to do it the other day. It's the holidays. It's been nutty. He thinks that Jesus will return, and I can't remember the date he put on it. I want to say 2034, 2035. I don't know. I'm of the opinion that the being they call Kalki in the East might be Jesus's return, and because it's Christian returning as Kalki, it's a very kind of similar story, and similar from an archetypal point of view. I've had some Christians get super bent out of shape by saying that, but there's a lot of things I say on the show that gets people bent out of shape, and I've just had to learn that whatever, some people like it, some people hate it. Question from Brad: what are your reservations about the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram? Oh yeah, great. I'm glad you asked that here. I think we talked about that. You asked it on the show. At least I hope so. Either that, or I didn't respond to your email, in which case I'm sorry. I think you said you wanted to ask it on the show, though. Maybe I'm making that up, though, to make myself look good. Yeah, so I don't like the order of things. It feels off to me. And the directions of the angels feels off to me. So I don't know. I go with sort of the directions that the angels have shown me, and I don't do the pentagram. I don't invoke Yahweh. I basically nowadays I just invoke Michael, Raphael, Raziel, and Metatron, and then I ask them to cleanse or transmute any energies and drive off any spirits. I work just completely with the angels. I don't invite any other energies in. And something about the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, I used it a number of times. It just, something about it I didn't like. I also saw like 2 different versions of it at one point. That also made me question it. But mostly it was an intuitive thing. And so I stopped using it. And now I just rely on the angels to drive off any spirits and work. So no need to like add sort of additional energies in there. So those are my things. I think they're similar to some of the concerns you had, Brad. Brad was one of my I think he's okay with me saying he's one of my angelic magic students along with other people. Brad's awesome. Koyos, and much love, yo. Much love to you, brother. All right, let's see. I hear references that we could be in another year if we follow the 13 moon year, that we are in the year 2056. The Earth is old, so how could a year numerology be relevant if the year number is unknown? Yeah, that's a great question. So there's 2 different thoughts on these kind of things, right? Like what matters? Is it something astrological? Is it something numerical? You know, the Gregorian calendar, all this kind of stuff. And my thought on that is that all those things matter, but the most dominant paradigm tends to trump, because it's that same thing that I talk about when I talk about magic on the channel, and how they use revelation, the method, to hijack a bunch of minds as like zombie computers in a DNS attack where all those zombie computers all work for one hacker and they all attack because they're a bunch of boomers' computers got taken over when they opened that email, right? I use that analogy to talk about that amplification of mental power that they're attempting to achieve with revelation of the method. The reason that that works is because it's a big chunk of the collective human unconscious that they're interfacing with. It's a lot of processing power. It's a lot of spiritual potency. They only get little snippets of that person's full spiritual potency because that person isn't actually fully consenting to it. And because they're not actually fully consenting to it, they're not sitting around with these other people in dark robes and really getting into the ritual. They're using a Super Bowl halftime show to plant a suggestion, a magical suggestion in people's consciousness to then be amplified. The best example of this being the 2012 Olympic Games COVID ritual thing, right? So what's the point of that? The point of that is that the dominant belief on Earth is that we're going into, some people in Australia are already in 2024. People on the East Coast are 10 minutes away in the United States. I'm on the West Coast, so I'm still 3 hours and 10 minutes away from 2024, but collectively we'll all be in 2024 in, I think, like 14 hours from now. We should all be in 2024, and we'll all collectively believe we're in 2024. And so therefore the numerology of 2024 works because the vast majority of people go by that. Yeah, there's the lunar calendar. There's like some calendars in Asia, those have some amount of sway. There's some Hindu calendars, they have some amount of sway. There's some old Orthodox sects that I think go from the old, not Gregorian, the Julian calendar, I think it's called. There's other people that go by different Jewish calendars. There's like Arabic calendars. I mean, there's the Mayan calendar, right? There's so many different calendars. So which one do you go by? Well, they all have relevance. They're all looking at slightly different things. They're all talking about slightly different things. They're all different cultures conceiving of time, but I believe that the dominant one is the one that carries the day in terms of what should we look at. And therefore, Vedic astrology is the dominant astrology probably on Earth looking at karmas. I think I can say that safely. And so therefore, it's the most useful one. Western astrology, in a certain sense, is even more useful because it's more widespread. I talk to fellow astrologers all the time, Western astrologers, and I get the Western astrological point of view, and I kind of let them do the heavy lifting on that, so I can just focus on Vedic astrology, because Vedic astrology is so extremely complex. But it works because it's looking at a different set of archetypes, and it's studying a different kind of thing, and it is the best of it, and it's actually growing in popularity. I think in another 10 years, Vedic astrology will be very popular, maybe more popular than Western astrology. People just don't really know about it. And so in a certain sense, Western astrology, which is not the main thing I practice, it's more useful because more people think in terms of the Western astrological, not calendar, but yeah, I mean, it is a calendar. Like there's like, I'm an Aries sun, Western tropical, which I greatly prefer, or a Pisces sun in Vedic. But in Vedic, the Pisces sun doesn't super duper explain my personality. It's more about like my relationship with my father, my outward persona to some degree, but it's just very different. Plus there's the Navamsa second half of life chart. And so, I mean, that's just it. Like the Navamsa is a derivation or a fractal of that first chart. So different things are used to look at different aspects of reality. And so there might be a reason why you'd want to look at the 13 moon year. That would be useful because you're looking at a different aspect of the fractal reality. One of the things I'm going to do tonight is I always do a tarot pull as close as I can to midnight. I try and start right exactly at midnight and do a full Celtic cross tarot pull. The reason I do that is because I'm trying to get a reading on the fractal of the universe in that exact moment. Because in that exact moment, there's a fractal of the entire year of 2024. And if I drop the cards will fall in a pattern which reflects that fractal of what that moment is. And you can do a similar thing with astrology where someone can ask you a question and you can throw a chart for that exact moment of the question, you're looking at a fractal. So my point is that all these different calendars, they work, but they're looking at different aspects of the fractal. They're looking at different pieces of information of this collective thing, which is more information than we can possibly even conceive of, right? Like, you know, I haven't read all the books on my shelf. I've read most of them, but I haven't read all the books on my shelf. And I certainly haven't retained all of that. And that's a little tiny fraction of a grain of sand on the ocean of the amount of human literature there is. And that's just human literature. There's a whole fucking universe beyond that. So trying to look at it, you know, I don't super care what's happening on the surface of Pluto right now, but I'm very interested in what's happening in Oregon in the United States right now. Do you see what I'm saying? And so if I'm looking at a tarot card and I do a tarot card pull, unless I specify it's for the world, and I'm going to specify it's for me, I'm looking at a fractal that's relevant to me in that moment. And likewise, there might be a reason why you'd want to use a 13-year moon and be in the year 2056. It's possible. I can't speak to that. The reason it's, to me, not as relevant is unless you have a specific purpose for it, I would recommend going with the main year that most people on Earth agree with, because that's more representative of human unconscious. And if you're trying to tap into the human collective unconscious to understand where things are headed, right, then you want to probably use the thing that best reflects the dominant culture, if that makes sense. Study white magic. Oh man, yeah. Boy, she's a bit young to do that. I think it's okay. It's very transformative. It's very destabilizing. Magic, like even good magic. Part of the reason I'm such a good magician is I have Pluto. Going back to Pluto, I have Pluto 0 degrees conjunct my ascendant, and so I'm constantly transforming. Like my entire life is about transformation. Transforming myself and others and things around me. And so I am used to chaos and destabilization. And I've learned how to sort of ride that wave over the course of my life. My concern with someone who's not at least a teenager, but probably even a full-blown adult doing it, is that it can be very destabilizing. And kids are already, getting destabilized all the time via just the rate at which they're growing. And then, you know, with teenagers, they're heavily destabilized. And so unless it's a particularly steady-minded person, I guess in some ways I'd rather have, say, an 8 or 9-year-old doing angelic magic than a 13 or 14-year-old, because a 13 or 14-year-old is wildly destabilized already. My concern would be that it might just be a little too much for a child. I wouldn't start with that. Like if a child was interested in the esoteric, I would suggest Reiki. Reiki is very gentle and simple, and I think first degree Reiki, you can't harm anyone or yourself with it. There's no way to do something that's could potentially come back to bite you in the ass. It's not as intense karmically. I would personally start with that. If your daughter's already doing that, you know, and you think that she's just going to do it regardless, then yeah, I would just support her and really emphasize to never ever use it to bind someone else, no matter how upset she is. That's the other thing I'd worry about is, like, a child is a child. And if I had been using magic when I was 9, of course I was badly abused. I might have used black magic, just not understanding the implications of it. You know, like trying to bind someone else's will, right? Or I might have wanted some girl to like me, maybe, you know. I don't know if I would have been so immature as to like try and make someone specific love me as opposed to a spell to call in love, right? I just would also worry about the maturity and whether, when not supervised, if the child would not perhaps do foolish things as children are wont to do, and the consequences for magic are quite high. So with all due respect and love to you, those are my thoughts on it. And I don't, I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm just like relaying some of my concerns and some of my thoughts of like perhaps a better redirect in something like Reiki, which is more gentle, or their psychic games, or even tarot, I think is better. I just think magic changing things, it's a lot of responsibility too for a kid. So yeah. Comment, who needs flight logs when names were already been presented in court for Ghislaine Maxwell? Yeah, exactly, which is all under seal. And I mean, that's going to come out too, I think, in the next year. I think that they're slow dripping that out there. And there's and like it's coming out more and more. Yeah, I mean, I really hope I'm right and that I'm reading the situation right, because I mean, there is a much darker take on things, right? Which is just that there's this evil unified elite that's unstoppable. That just doesn't make any sense to me, because I see clear signs of panic among a huge swath of the elite that I associate with the darkest group of elite, the WEF crew. I see either people who are incomprehensibly stupid, right, and arrogant, or panic amongst like the people that I know are my enemies, right, where it's beyond a shadow of a doubt, the group that I call the Malachians. And I see them dialing up the propaganda to 12, and it's becoming incoherent, and the psyops are falling apart. But at the same time, I see other psyops off to the side that are much more clever and sophisticated, that are lies and truth mixed in a very clever way to create a perception while avoiding certain inconvenient facts, such as like the vaccine thing. And so it's interesting to me that, you know, one of the things that I think people haven't really wrapped their minds around the truth community, and I realize this is really important, is there was a guy named Cass Susstein, and I meant to talk about this earlier. There was a guy named Cass Susstein in the Obama administration. He wrote a policy paper saying, listen, there's all these 9/11 truther wackos out there. We hate them because they're questioning the government, and how dare they? When has the government ever done anything wrong, right? And he said, like, we've tried lots of ways of combating them, and the only thing that seems to work is giving them fake conspiracies, and that we need to infiltrate them and put fake conspiracies out there, basically to distract people and to divide people, and we need to get people fighting in the truth community. Because back in the day, there wasn't a lot of fighting among 9/11 truth, a little bit, but pretty good. Nothing like modern day conspiracy theory circles. And so I'm going to see if I can get back into my account, because I really want to have a specific thread here that I want to share with you guys on this exact point, because I think it's something that's really impacting the truth community right now. Let me see if I can get this darn thing to work. Ugh. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. Should be. It's going to work? Oh, come on. Okay. Looks like it's going ever so slowly. Not now. I don't want to do any additional nonsense. I just want to use this thing. All right. Pull it back up. I'm sorry, I want to follow a very specific thread because I think it's incredibly important. And it actually, like, kind of like when this hit me, oh yeah, I just remembered a part of it that I want to talk about. That's awesome. Okay. All right, so let me actually even back it up from before Cass Susstein. So before Cass Susstein, there was a meeting actually at the first Reagan administration cabinet meeting where the CIA director, I think it was William Casey at the time, said, know that our disinformation campaign is complete when everything the American public believes is false. Now think about what that means. When you have old school media, you can just have everything on old school media be false, right? When there's just old school media, and that more or less gets everyone, right? All the radio and the magazines and the newspapers and the TVs, they're all saying the same thing. We pretty much saw that. Well, then you have this disruption event, right? This Luciferian impulse shown with the internet, right? Which is a precursor to the Aquarian age. And it's like one of the strongest Aquarian signatures out there, right? And also, I would say Luciferian signatures out there. Well, suddenly it's incredibly disruptive to have that out there. And so they realized that they had to lie. And so they started lying about 9/11 in particular. There was a number of lies. The hologram planes, there was just some other bullshit that was out there meant to discredit the truth community and to divide us. And so they realized that worked. And so Cass Susstein said, we got to infiltrate conspiracy theory circles around 2009, right? Then in the 2010s, and I'm going to piss some people off here, but I'm sorry, I'm just going to do it. There was two major conspiracy theories came out of nowhere. And then in the late 2010s, a kind of harmless one, and then some other pile-on bullshit theories appeared. But these two theories that appear in the 2010s, all of a sudden, both kind of from the dustbin of history, are flat Earth, right? And viruses don't do harm, right? It's all terrain. It's either EMFs or, and again, I believe EMFs are harmful. I believe that there's spraying in the sky that's harmful. I believe that there's food additives and like so much food is damaging pesticides and all that stuff, and it's turning the frogs gay. Like in the atrazine is literally turning the frogs gay. Hat tip to Alex Jones, right? So I'm aware of all that stuff, but there's a big difference between just everyone being poisoned, which looks kind of like obesity skyrocketing and people are having like neurological diseases and people are having obesity and just problems with hormones, right? Like male testosterone in particular is really dropping, right? So I'm not contesting any of that, but there are also viruses. Viruses are real and do harm. I've known people who've worked in virology labs who at the time was like my very best friend, and he really was sad because he was working with rabbits and mice, and he was injecting them with viruses in a clean room. And everything was clean, and they tested the fuck out of everything. They triple tested everything. There was no adulterants. There was nothing. There was just the isolated virus, and they infected the rats with it. They would have the rats sometimes move, and they would see the way it spread through a colony. And they did all stuff, and it worked exactly right. It doesn't make any sense. There wasn't a sudden new EMFs in their cage. There wasn't a little miniature plane going around the cages of the mice spraying them. It was a virus. And plus, I know lots of physicians who are anti-regular vaccines, which I agree with, and a lot of people need to realize those are super bad news as well. And also anti the COVID vaccine. They're well aware of Rockefellers and all that stuff. We're on board. They're basically like, they're allopathic physicians, and they understand that there's limitation for it, but they also understand that there's a lot of value in the Western medical system, even if there's this huge corruption factor in it. And all the nurses, all the doctors I know who are right at the forefront, and they're actually laying everything on the line, risking their medical licenses and stuff to talk about this, they all say that, you know, of course, viruses are real. And how fortunate to be able to say, to push that out there, that viruses don't do harm before you unleash a major biological weapon on the citizenry. Gosh, that's really helpful to have that kind of fog of war out there and confusion among truth seekers. You know, viruses can be real, and COVID could be a weapon, and the vaccine is the really deadly aspect. All of that is true. And, you know, these things, viruses spread in a way that only makes sense if the viral theory is correct. It doesn't make sense the way things move through populations. If it was poison or EMFs or any of these other things. And again, EMFs are harmful and weaken your immune system, right? All this poisoning is weakening the immune system, and all that poisoning is happening. I'm not questioning whether all that's happening. I'm saying I am convinced that this viruses don't do harm thing, which did not exist in the 1990s, is fake. Everything else, almost all the conspiracies that you can imagine that are like before 9/11, all of the internet before 9/11. I know because I was, for a while there, super into going down conspiracy rabbit holes in the 90s. I didn't really take it super seriously, but I've always been an eighth house person. I've always been interested in conspiracy theories since I was a kid, and the JFK thing just didn't make any sense to me. And at 12, I decided my dad was dumb, and there was something to this JFK assassination. Clearly, it was not the way they said. And because of having read ancient history and assassinations, it didn't make sense to me what the adults were saying about it. It just didn't make any sense to me. It made more sense to me that the adults were getting it wrong. So the point is that anything that was a pre-9/11 conspiracy, for example, the Federal Reserve, JFK, MLK, RFK, MK Ultra, right? Nazi paperclip scientists. When I was in the 1980s, all that shit that I just rattled off there, which everyone's like, oh, of course there's, what do you call that stuff? Of course there's chemtrails. Of course there's vaccines or depopulation. Of course there's JFK and RFK and all that was a conspiracy, you know, and CIA and the mafia and whoever killed these people. You know, of course the central bankers were coordinating it all. Like, people just act like that's all common knowledge. That was not common knowledge. That was way on the periphery, all of those things in the 80s and 90s. But all of that was true. And there's just no fucking way that if the earth was flat and it was being suppressed the whole time, and which means 500-year long conspiracy with hundreds of thousands of people involved, never leaks. What? Like, the nuclear weapons were out in a couple of years over to Russia. Of course it would leak. Like, get out of here. That's just it. Like, it always leaks out. Everybody knew, people on the periphery knew JFK had been assassinated in obviously some kind of coup in real time, because that shit leaks out. It always does. They do a good job of clamping it, and they get rid of primary witnesses, bang, 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 people who can sink them. But it gets out first. It always gets out. And so if Rockefeller had been hiding the fact that viruses weren't real, how come there was nothing on the internet about it in the 90s? I would have seen it. And there was nothing. You know, that they were had viruses that caused cancer, that they had dropped all these viruses, that including AIDS and stuff that caused cancer in the Congo, right? That they had used viruses in South Africa and biowarfare stuff. All that stuff that at the time was deep conspiracy theory that later would like be revealed in a court of law, for example, with the South African bioweapons. It was on the internet someplace already because it had leaked. All this stuff had got out. Stuff about the black nobility was out there, even back then. Lyndon LaRouche had figured it out. Others had figured it out. So everything that is about conspiracies before 9/11, if it didn't exist before 9/11 internet, which was when the stuff was much more pure and not infiltrated, anything that's about a conspiracy prior to 9/11 that has appeared in modern times, Tartaria, is probably some kind of bullshit. And again, there's elements of truth to at least, maybe not flat earth, but to Tartaria, that there's like certain elements there, that there's something true, although there's problems with it too. And the viruses don't do harm is outright super dangerous, right? Because if you believe that viruses don't do harm, you might actually put yourself in harm's way. If you think they do harm, and you also understand the vaccines are dangerous, then you're most likely to take the most safety precautions, right? So it's actually safer for you to believe that they're bad, because worst case, you're just being extra cautious. Of course, masks don't work unless maybe N95 or whatever, you know, but that's not what I mean. I'm talking about actually, oddly, doing terrain theory, keeping your body up to be healthy, but understanding that you don't want to go out there if there's some big virus rampaging through where people are, right? Understanding that they're dangerous, and also holding accountable these people who just did this virological attack. So they then did another thing, which is that they turned up the woke thing, right around the same time period. Woke appears way on the peripheries. All the trans woke nonsense, it was out there, but you had to go way to the fringes of the internet to see it. And what woke is basically weaponized empathy, where they're taking people's empathy and turning it back and using that supposed empathy as a tool of oppression. So I won't belabor that point because that's very well understood. But this is one of the things they figured out with the infiltration of the truth movement. Blackpilling people was one of their most effective ways of taking people who are realizing that there's bullshit going on and who might then become organized in a collective interest kind of way and put a stop to the criminality. That those people, if you instead take their feelings of alienation, cynicism, and despair and weaponize that and turn that inward against them, rather than them having righteous anger at the elites, instead they go around going, no way, the elites are a monolithic cabal. They meet in submarines under the ice caps every year, and they're just a perfectly unified machine, and there's not even a like slight division there, and we're just doomed, we're doomed. Black lightning, we're doomed. Right? I used to do that myself. Disempowering people because I was black-pilled. I was black-pilled in the early 2000s, straight up. And so then another thing that happens, and again, I did this too, and so I have to have compassion, right? Like I even initially bought 2020. I figured out 9/11 on 9/11, but for whatever reason, I think it's because my brother's one of the first people who got really sick in the entire state of Oregon. He was in the ICU at OHSU, and they had to drain his lungs and stuff. And I was going through a divorce at the time, and I just didn't get it until March. I didn't figure it out until March, but I did eventually figure it out. But what a lot of people will do is if they're woke and they're using weaponized empathy, they'll do virtue signaling. But if they're black-pilled or just getting like weird and making it about a dick measuring contest with conspiracy theory stuff, which is very common, I call that savvy signaling. I'll never get duped. I'm far too cynical to get duped because I know the earth is flat and the whole thing is a lie and everything's a lie and NASA's a lie. And this is a new one, and I've got to share. I actually have to share a picture of this. This is how you know that they've gotten people so alienated and so distrusting of authority that even like brass tacks facts, which is super important if we want to have a pseudo consensus based reality, we have to agree on certain brass tacks. And amongst the things that is the most astonishing to me is that now I'm seeing people say, and this is just absolutely wild, this is real, deleted the guy's thing. He said, Ian Ferguson, this is some guy on Facebook, his basis for entropy is a whole bunch of fake premises. He was railing away against Elon Musk. There were no ancient Romans or Egyptians. NASA never went to the moon. The entropy describes about things that never happened. And so I said, oh, okay, you're someone who believes everything is false and fake. Unfortunately, that leaves you untethered from reality and ripe for manipulation. Ironically, it's one of the big black-pilling psyops emanating from Tavistock in the CIA. So think about that for a minute. And I'm actually going to talk about the Mandela effect here in a second. Think about that for a minute. Homeboy doesn't believe in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, that's like arguably the most heavily attested to thing in the entirety of Western civilization. It lasted for, I think, 1,000 years, essentially. Right? Certainly longer than that if you include the Eastern Roman Empire. It lasted quite a bit after that until the Ottoman Turks. So it lasted like maybe even bordering on 2,000 if you're counting Constantinople. Right? I mean, that is lengthy. And I want to take this Ghislaine thing down because it's not currently relevant anymore. So he doesn't believe in the Roman Empire. And I mean, he clarified that he literally just thought it was all bullshit. And I'm just like, dude, there's aqueducts, there's frickin', I've partied in Roman ruins of questionable legality. Hopefully the statute of limitations is up on that. It's been 20 plus years. I don't know. I went to a party in this amazing, Roman ruins, this grotto. There's so much Roman ruins around Rome that it's just like people were squatting in it and had a party there. But yeah, there's columns everywhere. I've seen aqueducts outside of Rome. I mean, you can still see Roman roads in some places, because they were made so well. And then there's all this history and all these firsthand accounts and all this secondary analysis of Rome for centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries. I mean, I can't really think of something more substantial than the Roman Empire, for God's sake, and its universally accepted existence. They're getting people to not even trust any aspect of history, and they tend to trust anything that's a new spin on history, right? Think about that. If you want to rewrite history, what better group of people? You've just obliterated history as it existed. You've convinced them Rome doesn't exist because they're so alienated by discovering the depth of betrayal of what's happening in the world that they become ultra cynical and they completely become untethered from reality and unable to differentiate between fact and fiction. And you go back to that Reagan CIA director saying, the disinformation campaign is complete when everything the American people believe is false. Did people really think they weren't going to do the same thing they did in the 70s with COINTELPRO, that they wouldn't do the same thing with conspiracy theory circles? Of course they would. They would be foolish not to. And one of the best things they could do is get people to chase their tail on all kinds of nonsense, right? Things that are divisive and wasting times, or things that provide valuable psychological cover during fifth generational warfare, where you tell people, oh, there's no such things as thieves. And so I know it looks like I'm robbing you right now, but that would require thievery to be real. And we both know that thievery is not real, right? We both know the viruses can't harm. So obviously we can't be held accountable for something. Like there won't be a big enough groundswell of support to hold us accountable, because a large section of the people who are paying any attention whatsoever have been duped into thinking viruses aren't real. You see? Like it's so clever. It's maddeningly clever the way these people operate. But they're doing that. So that brings me to the Mandela effect. I think I figured out what the Mandela effect is. I've wondered about it for years. I do think there's something to the timelines thing, okay? So I think it's multiple things. But one of the things that I think is happening with the Mandela effect is that I think it's a psyops. I think the Mandela effect, which came out around 2010, same time period, I think it's to create this fungible past. You start convincing people that we can't trust our collective memories of things by making little tiny edits in movies you control, right? Like the whole Darth Vader thing that could easily be edited. I don't know if there's another clip out there, but the Berenstein Bears versus Berenstein versus Berenstain, right? Which is what they claim now it is. Or my favorite, which I actually have something for this, and I'm very excited because I took a screenshot of this. I have known one of the most crazy to me, what do you call it? Mandela effects has been for a while now, this thing of the Shazam movie. Now, Shazam was a dumb, totally worthless, waste of time film that is absolute garbage, but just somehow I remember it. And I want to show this picture to you. Somehow I remember that Shazam was quite real, and it starred Sinbad, the comedian. And I was like, I know that's real. People have frickin' the VHS tapes of it. And it's exactly what I remember it saying on the back. A wisecracking genie with a mean attitude. I even remember that incredibly stupid, like a wisecracking genie with a mean attitude by Newsday. I even remember that terrible endorsement, because I looked at this box dozens of times, because back in the day you had a limited selection at the local place where you could rent videos before Blockbuster came out. It was all mom and pop places. And near where I lived, it was very limited. So I looked at that box cover so many freaking times, and I almost got it. And I saw bits and pieces of it in there. But think about it. You want to convince people they can't trust their major memories. You want to get people kind of untethered and starting to accept that things even they're sure about in the past, maybe you just forgot, right? That's the whole thing they say with the Mandela effect. They say, no, you're confused. They gaslight you, right? And what does it matter if you're getting rid of Sinbad, right, in Shazam? What difference does that make? Is that really a big deal? Well, it's a big deal if you start doing that with more and more and more things, right? And like they do this already, revisionist history. Like the whole 1619 Project thing is like revisionist history to create more racial division in the country, right? We already know about slavery, but this is like, you know, sort of like re-legislating the civil rights movement after the fact and trying to convince people that it's still 1950 or 1970, you know, and that there's been no progress made, which actually is like shitting on the graves of all these great activists who made all that progress. So you start tweaking little things, and you pay an old washed up comedian like Sinbad to swear it never happened, right? Just pay him $10 million. He'll say it, or threaten him. Maybe you have tapes on him of a not so Shazam sort of more Epstein sort of, who knows, right? There's all kinds of ways they could get to that guy to make him say that. I think that might be what the Mandela effect is largely. I think some of it is some kind of merging of timelines, or that there's some kind of thing going on with time. I think that's happening, but I also think they're taking advantage of it in a much more practical way by using it to begin to get people completely untethered from reality. Like this guy who thought the Roman Empire, he really believed it too. He thought the Roman Empire wasn't real. He also thought the moon wasn't real. Now, if you want to say the moon is artificial, okay, but there's a big difference between artificial, which I think there's a lot of evidence for the moon being artificial, but thinking the moon doesn't exist is like, it's literally right up there, bro. And it's full right now. Like, what are you talking about? Like, get a telescope. A lot of this stuff that where people suffer from delusions would be solved if they got out of light pollution and got a telescope and just looked up, and zoomed in. Like, I'll be damned, there's Jupiter with fucking moons flying around it. You don't even need an ultra expensive one. Maybe $1,000, but wouldn't it be worth it to you? And then how do you explain that it's brown, that it comes closer to you when you look through this little thing and there's moon circling it? Anyways, so let's see. Let's get back to questions here. That was one of the main things I wanted to talk about earlier, and then my notes shut down, but then I remembered that it went well. So, yep, that's where we were. Dottie said, thank you for providing light in these times. Best to you in 2024. Thank you, Dottie. Gian Kana said, I picked Michael for my confirmation name, 8th grade. Oh, yeah, I did that too. I was raised Catholic. Happy New Year. Hey, Happy New Year, Maya. Good to see you. I recently did a Google search for chess balking, and it references the writings of Enki Belial. Could these be Enki? Huh. Interesting. Was the name that give to the group that sort of helped bring Atlantis down. I don't know whether it's up there. I'll say it again. The Brotherhood of Belial is a name that some people give to the group that kind of overthrew Atlantis at the end of the Golden Age. And Belial, that deity, is very chaos-driven. That's another thing that the angel said that I remember, is that they said that some of the chaos that the Malachians are going to unleash this time around in 2024, it's going to turn on them, because some of those groups have realized that they're being used. And when they're cut loose, they're going to turn on their masters. So think about like the people burning down cities last time. They might turn their anger onto the people who are running them, because they know that they're going to be sold out the first chance, and that they have been sold out. FBI, I finally catch one of these lives, but I've got to go to court in 1 hour. Oh, well, you got to go to court. You must be in Australia or something, because yeah, I mean, I guess you must just be in Australia or Asia, perhaps. Well, good luck in court. What are your thoughts on channeling collectives of angels? Are you familiar with Sheila Gilletto Theo? No, I have not heard of that person at all. So I would just be commenting in ignorance. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of stick with the 7 archangels for the 7 days of the week and the 7 ancient planets. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know this person. That the way it's described there doesn't resonate with my experience with angels, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. FYI, for all those listening, Ian's angel magic totally works. I highly recommend employing these allies in a most highly like. Oh, thanks, Clint. Yeah, Clint was one of my students. Pretty much all of my students have reported that it was just really life-changing for me. I have 2 slots left. If that class fills up, I might open another in the U.S. And I have 4 slots still available. Perhaps one is somewhat spoken for with some, but I have 3 classes and 3 spots and maybe 4 in an Australia Oceania class. These are all starting in January. And so, yeah, if you're interested, now's the time. Also, just real quick as an aside, I'm literally raising my prices tomorrow. I'm going to do it whenever I get up. So if you want to book any readings, now's the time to do it, because my prices are going up substantially tomorrow. I have a lot of goals that I need to achieve, and I'm actually maxed out on busyness, and I just need to earn a bit more because I know that what I do is worth it. And like people have been telling me for years, I'm actually not charging enough, which might be shocking to some people, but I need to be able to support my family. So my prices are going up tomorrow, like substantially. And so if you want any services as far out in 2024 as you want, natal charts, thermometer charts, joining an angelic magic class, or which that starts in January. That won't be changing for this class. The next class it will. Or spiritual guidance, if you want any of those things, you want to do that right away, like before tomorrow, say, I don't know, 10 a.m. or to noon sometime tomorrow, I will update the prices. So just be aware of that. Happy New Year's, guys. Living free. Hey, happy New Year to you too. Happy New Year, Ian. Do you think an actual civil war will happen in the U.S. or will it be overblown and incite riots? I think there'll be riots. There could be areas where there's some kind of pitched battles. I just think that what's going to happen is going to be over real quick and limited, probably primarily to the East Coast, and it'll be like more like surgical strike kind of stuff. I think there could be a real nasty back and forth for a little period of time after the election to, January 21st could be very dicey indeed. I don't think it'll go to full-blown civil war, but they're definitely like, I'd be nervous if I lived in DC, greater DC area, or a place where there's a lot of Politico people or very wealthy people, unless you have your own giant manor and are involved in anything. Thank you. I'll try to keep it slow, focus on the South and the importance of free will, but you're right, I can't stop. I'll point her to Reiki and Tarot. You kick 7 kinds of ass. Wow, I didn't realize there were 7 kinds of ass. That's good to know. I guess I've seen 7 kinds of woman ass at least, more than that, in fact. But I never thought of different kinds of ass to kick. Is the Sons of Belial a real term? Yeah. That's. I think you kind of repeated the same question here that I think you said above. Yeah. So the angel said that in 2024 that there's going to be a lot of repeats of the themes of 2020, but it's not going to go the same way. Because the Machins are dumb and are going to use a lot of those similar strategies that they've been using over the years. And it's not going to work this time. When in Rome, deny the existence of the literal marble ruins right in front of your face that weigh several tons and are clearly pockmarked with weathering. That's all fake. They just put that there one weekend when nobody was looking. Not only did Rome exist, perhaps it's still around with a different name. Absolutely. See? Yeah, that's another thing. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world it didn't exist, right? So if Rome didn't exist, then any sort of ongoing Roman Empire, which is a great point, right? Because it's Italian in character. You could say the Roman Empire moved into the Vatican and to the banks of the Rialto, which is the Venetians. Sinbad was Cosby's protege. Wow. I did not know that. That is creepy. Definitely artificial, metallic. Yep. You're in Tehran? Oh, shit. Well, wow. I don't even know what to say about that. Good luck in court. I hope that goes well. That's wild. I did not think I had anyone who watched me from Iran. That's amazing. I'm surprised I'm not blocked in Iran, or that YouTube isn't blocked over there. I guess I never say anything bad about them. Weirdly, the only reason I'm here is because an Ayatollah saved my father's life in the 60s. My dad, it's a long story, which I'm not going to get into here, but my dad had a very hot-headed friend who was an idiot, and they were about to get killed because my dad's friend was a fucking moron and tried to pick a fight with a ton of Iranian people. And it made sense why he was getting up in arms, but it was just so dumb. And they were going to kill him and just throw him off the roof. And then it just so happened that Ayatollah's procession came by and intervened on my father's behalf. I guess I've already basically told the story at this point. Basically, like, my father and his friend were at this hotel, and you have to give your passport up when you go to the hotel, because hotels figured out a long time ago that people will just skip out on you if you don't have something tangible that they're going to come back for in order to pay up, right? So they left their passports there, and my dad and his friend went through this mob of children, and this is during the Shah's Iran, right? It's pre-revolution. So among the many wonders of the West that were there in the Shah's Iran were tons of little urchin children who would pickpocket you. And so my dad and his friend got pickpocketed, and they went back and they told the people who ran the hotel, and they go, "That's a damn shame. So that'll be $80. It's probably $10, whatever it was, right? Because it's back in the 60s and ran, so $20 perhaps, whatever it was. They didn't have it, $100 maybe. They didn't have it, and so they said, "Well, just give us our passports. We'll go earn money, and then we'll come back." And they're like, "Oh yeah, we're sure you'll come back if we give you your passports. You're going to go to another country, get money, and bring it back out of the goodness of your heart, because you're such, no, we won't be giving you your passport. And so rather than try and bargain or figuring out a wise solution, my dad's friend tried to attack the guy who ran the hotel because he got so pissed at him. And it turned into a full-on brawl, and my dad and his friend lost because there was like 10 other guys. So they got, of course, they ended up getting their ass kicked. But more than that, these guys had enough of my dad and his friend, and they already knew he didn't have any money, right? So it can't be too important if you don't have any money and you're not like calm and coming up with solutions. You're just some dumb Western, forget what the word for a foreigner is, infidel or whatever, right? And so they're getting ready to chuck my dad and his friend off the like 7-story roof of this building, and then go, oh darn, those guys must have got really sad and said jump off the 7th floor. Maybe that's why they were doing it that way, was so they'd have a way of explaining it away, why my dad and this guy were thrown from the building, that they had jumped when, you know, they got real depressed or whatever. And so they were up there getting ready to throw him, and then this processional of Ayatollah came up, and like my dad and his friend yelled out, help, help. And the Ayatollah looked up, and he said, he said it in Farsi or whatever, right? The Iranian language. He was like, you up there, stop what you're doing, meet me downstairs. And so they all met downstairs, and they had this big circle, and they all drank tea, and the Ayatollah said, explain to me what's happening. And the guy said, oh, these fucking Americans, pardon, I shouldn't say fuck in front of you, obviously they didn't say that, but they said, oh, you know, great Ayatollah, like these Americans are trying to, or this American guy, and I think their guy was Italian maybe, are trying to rip us off. So, and then they attacked us, so we're just gonna kill them. And he was like, well, you can't just kill these people, like that's not justified. I understand these men did it. And so he said, well, how much do these men owe you? $100, just make it round. And he said, I think because of the trouble these men have cost, that they should pay you $150 or $200. And the guy go, oh, okay, I like that. And then they go, don't you agree that that's a good price, American guy and this other one? And my dad and friend are like, oh, that sounds great. That sounds wonderful. The not being thrown off the roof seems like a huge upgrade over what was about to go down. Yeah, $200 sounds awesome. Like, where do we sign for that? And so the Ayatollah said, here's what I think. I think we will give one of the two of you your passport back. You'll go and you'll talk to your American friends and your other wealthy Western friends, and you'll get these men the money and you'll bring it back. And so the guy, don't ask me why my dad didn't go, but the other guy went, and thank God, he then came back with $200 like a month later or whatever, and plus like some additional money for my dad had to work there and all this kind of stuff. They had to just paid them like money basically for my dad being there as well. And so, yeah, if it wasn't for an Ayatollah, I wouldn't be here. It's just kind of a crazy story. And my dad would sometimes embellish stuff, but that always had that ring of truth to me. It was just so vivid the way he'd tell the story. He'd have all kinds of details when he'd tell it. Oh, I miss my dad. Do you see beings in this universe besides angels that are aligned with the Most High? Are you asking if I interact with spirits other than just the angels? Yes. I direct 90% of my energies towards the angels. It's really helped me tremendously in life. It's made me more peaceful and love, uplifting, and good. It's just benefited me, and I just feel like I'm home. I feel like I'm home spiritually. Like I went around all over the place. I do still feel a longing in my heart in some kind of way for enlightenment, and just to like, I am tired. I've incarnated here for a long time. Like I either really love it here or I'm some kind of dunce, because I had a past life memory of being one of those Homo florensis people, those little hobbits, and it came through as clear as can be, which that was a minimum 50,000 years ago. That's when they went extinct. So, you know, it could have been 60, 70,000 years ago. And so I've been incarnating here for a long time. And so that's not a point of bragging, because again, maybe I'm retarded and I seem smart because I'm like a 30-year-old who's still in 3rd grade, and these 3rd graders like, wow, that 30-year-old guy, he's really getting his life together. So I've just been reincarnating here over and over and over again for forever. But I do also feel tired. But right now I just feel, in part because of a different, very different past life, very relevant to things currently unfolding. I feel like I need to make up for that life, and that I need to do really good in this life. And so I'm very aligned with the angels. However, that said, if a being isn't too low vibrational, yes, I can interact with them. There was a time where I could see stuff up to the angels and down to the pits of the lower astral. And then the seraphim gave me this golden mark on my third eye. They sort of dubbed me with a, what do you call that? Anointed me with this like golden oil. And I'd had one previously, but this was like an upgraded one. Now I can only, oh, the camera's going out again, darn it. I'll wait for a second. Yeah, so now I can only really see stuff at just below neutral, which is where Lucifer's energy is in slightly on the dark side. Lucifer is not as dark as a lot of people think, but he is dark, right? And not to be trusted. That's one thing, including much darker spirits, is Lucifer is not to be taken over and not trusted. He's the master liar. Like, Moloch's not really good at lying. Moloch's like, Moloch, crush, grog, kill, right? Like, so Lucifer is very sophisticated with manipulation. So I used to be able to see a much fuller spectrum. I'm super grateful that I don't anymore. So I mostly only see stuff that's vibrating at neutrality or higher, kind of on just the opposite side of a similar distance from neutrality from Lucifer, but in the positive direction as Lord Thoth. And Lord Thoth I am very close with and do connect with often. I also connect with Ganesha sometimes. I sometimes talk to other Hindu and Egyptian pantheon like Ra on occasion. These beings are all, they all have existence of their own. You can also say they're archetypal and exist to some degree as egregores in the collective human unconscious. They both have an independent existence, and they also matter archetypally. One of the things that people sometimes struggle to understand is how things aren't one thing or another. Things are usually many things. Like, think of humans, right? Think of anyone you know. They're very complex, right? Even the people we call derisively NPCs or whatever, they're really complicated. They have complicated motivations. They tend to not be examining their own motivations, and that's what makes them an NPC. But they're very complex, and we really shouldn't just reduce them down and dehumanize them. They're very complex. Well, the thing is many other things are just as complex and multifaceted as humans, and it's true with these other beings, right? They exist on multiple planes of existence. They're archetypal in nature, right? So to a certain extent, when you're interacting with these beings, you're interacting with an archetype that exists in the collective unconscious. However, I would also say, based on my experience, that these beings also have their own sentience and their own varying degrees of development. And that once a being reaches a deity level, that it's worshipped as a god, and it usually has to go through a lot of spiritual development to get to that level. There's kind of like a development where you go through humans, then there's the demigod state. That one's really easy to get stuck in because it's very often about power and understanding like use of power, and most people get stuck in it. And you could argue that all the people that are fighting on the earth, like the black nobility and other high-level people, the Luciferians, right, Lockeans, Elon Musk, right, people at that level, they're at the demigod level, right? They're human, but they're also superhuman and incarnate as superhuman over and over again until they've all, and then they can go to the deity level. And then you can go to an off-planet deity level. These deities are also evolving. There's also like different branches of evolution. You could go into, if you decide you want to work more with humans, you could go into an evolution of becoming an angel over time or an ascended master. There's different evolutionary pathways that beings can take. And so, yes, I do see other beings, and these beings exist both as archetypes and as egregores to some extent, or there's an egregore associated with them, as a matter of fact, but there's also an independent being. And the degree of worship that being has determines the degree of power and vitality that God has. And if it dips down low enough, they go into like a torpor a deity coma, but they'll very often be spontaneously resurrected as people rediscover that archetype and rediscover that aspect of reality on earth and want to worship it in the form of a deity. And a classic example is the ancient Egyptian deity Kek has reconstituted and resurrected itself. So did Isis. Isis sprang back into consciousness in part because of the terrorist organization. That too was a resurrection of a certain sort into the collective unconscious again. But Kek, which is Pepe the frog, has completely sprung back out of a total deity coma and being gone, this Egyptian god of chaos and disease. Have we seen any chaos and disease increasing since 2015, 2014, when Kek reappeared as Pepe, right? And the whole meme magic movement sprang from that. And there's been all manner of chaos since then. That god resurrected itself. And this can happen with these gods, and eventually does happen, until that god either sinks lower in consciousness or higher. And they can, you know, as you become a god, you can bifurcate into one of the polarities. You can move towards darker polarity or towards lighter polarity, because those polarities are also paths. So it's all very complicated, but it all has to do with evolution of souls, and that as souls go through different levels of evolution, they can become demigods. Oh, an example of someone who's a demigod, who is a disincarnate demigod, right? And is probably more appropriately called a demigod, a true demigod, because they're no longer corporeal in form, but they carry tremendous power, is Kuan Yin. She was a Buddhist who attained a super high level of enlightenment. She decided to stay here on Earth and be a healer, and she was a super high level of consciousness. And when she passed away, she became legendary, and she gained devotees and followers after her death, and it spread and grew. And according to, I think it was the angels told me this, Kuan Yin is on the cusp of becoming a full-blown deity. So hopefully that's interesting. Is there a difference between tartan and tartari? Well, yeah, I mean, tartan is just the, tartan are just the different patterns of plaid for the different Scottish tribes. And Tartaria, I don't know, man. Another thing is, like, I'm not sure what people are going to think about this, but people are always telling me to check out this Archaics guy. So I finally did. I haven't gone super deep on his channel, but I was kind of like right away he said some things that were just like real head scratchers for me. Like, he claimed that during Plato's era, everyone knew that Atlantis was 1700 BC. I've never heard that ever. I've never heard that even once. I would be astonished if some random dude could somehow have defeated, like, you know, 200 years of scholarship around Atlantis of various different, like, supreme intellectuals. Some of them, like Dr. Joseph Farrell, that I totally, completely trust and think are good people. I have a hard time believing that Jason Brasher guy somehow scooped, you know, Graham Hancock, and, you know, he claims Graham Hancock's totally a fraud. And, like, I think Graham Hancock knows more than he's let on, and I think people are helping Graham Hancock is what's actually going on there. Secret societies are helping Graham Hancock. I kind of actually even know that's true. I can say that much. So I think that's what's going on there. But he has said, you know, that claim that Atlantis is from 1700 BC makes zero sense to me on any level. That was just the very first time I looked at this guy's thing. And then this idea of an ancient AI, I mean, when I didn't watch a ton of this because it seems like I'd have to watch a lot, hours and hours, to even understand where this guy's coming from. But he says, like, you know, there's an ancient AI, and that that idea of an ancient AI is really similar to the Gnostic demiurge, right? And what's curious to me is he claimed that this AI could just, you know, change reality at a whim, in that it would never let anyone who could challenge the AI to come along. And I was just like, well, if we're living inside an AI in a simulation, and you're saying this is a jealous AI and it'll smite it, and that it can totally warp reality and does periodically, why would it let you talk, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, if it's all powerful, unless it has some kind of rather extreme limitations, you know, I don't know, there was just a number of things just right out of the gate where I was just like, huh. And that guy is kind of like rocketed, like super duper rocketed to fame. Like, I've watched his channel grow from like, you know, because I just checked it out a few different times when people said it to me, and I always be like, oh yeah, I need to watch that guy's channel. And like, he's at like 100 and something thousand subscribers. And I will tell you, I should be at probably 5,600 or 5,700. I watch it go down, the counter go down, and I go through all my videos of the past couple of months to see if any of them are showing a down subscriber from that. It's not. It's YouTube is unsubscribing people, I'm sure of it. And so when people are over the target, YouTube does everything it can to hinder their growth once they reach a certain level, and it seems like they're capping it sooner. When people are not over the target, the algorithm lets people go just absolutely bananas. And so I don't know. I have to look into this guy more. My immediate thought was like, so many people told me I got to look into this guy. He's so amazing and whatever. He certainly makes amazing claims, and some of it was definitely fascinating. It didn't resonate with me, and it didn't fit with like esoteric and historical knowledge that I know. So yeah. Let's see here. Sheila laughed, and then, have you read The Keys of Enoch, the Book of Knowledge by Dr. J.J. Hurtak? No, I have not. I will say, if that's about Enochian magic, you should definitely be careful with Enochian magic. It's quite charged and powerful. I have books on it. I've never used Enochian magic thus far. I'm a little nervous about it, kind of intuitively. It's something I want to explore at some point, but I'm going to be very careful and only with the guidance of the angels, because my with them now is strong, and I feel like I could maybe do it now. So I'm not sure if it's to do with Enochian magic. I will say that Enoch is a critical figure in magic, one of the most important of all time. You know, at least in where we have any kind of decent records. You know, Melchizedek as well, going much further back to Atlantis. Let's see. UI guy said, Happy New Year, Ian. I think that is my buddy there on the, which it would be. Oh yeah. Happy New Year's to all the East Coasters, and anyone into Europe and Asia. It's probably already New Year's for you guys. Well, Happy New Year's. Daniel Smith, super sticker. Thank you so much. Dan Zach Smith, appreciate it. Yeah, so my general thought on the whole aliens thing is that for sure, there is such a thing. For sure, they come in and they kind of they act to some degree as spoilers. There's certain like predestination stuff that has to happen on Earth, but where there's wiggle room, these other species come in here and do all kinds of nonsense. So in particular, the reptilians, Pleiadians, and Arcturians are kind of the big ones that do all kinds of nonsense here on Earth, so it seems. And some of it you could say is positive. You know, to me, just as a general intuitive feeling, Arcturians and Pleiadians feel more friendly to me than some of these other ones. For sure, the reptilians feel generally like way less friendly to me, but they also feel like, I think people look at them as too collectivist, and they actually do have individual free will. I mean, one thing about ET is they're free will beings. Right? Angels do not have free will. They just sort of function. I'm not even certain if demons have free will. I feel like they too kind of like have a program. It's just a program that's sort of in opposition to the angels. And it's funny because their whole program is to get people to give up their free will. It's kind of their program, whereas angels is there to support people in having free will and choosing to do good within the context of having free will. But they're trying to like maintain the integrity of the test, whereas demons are trying to prove one side of it. The angels are simultaneously trying to keep the test fair and encourage people to go towards one polarity, right? So yeah. Alex, yes. Sorry, Alex, I just blanked your name. Yeah. Even in your last name, Alex, but I have doxed you before by accident, so I won't do it again. Alex is the gentleman I was referring to earlier about some of the numerology stuff that I said around Year of the Dragon and the number 8 and karma. Some of it was related to things angels have said. It's so funny that it's an 8 year and it's a karmic year, and that ties exactly to what the angels have said about 2024. And so it's fascinating that that's also an 8 karma year as well. I agree, Ian. I don't resonate with the idea that the earth plane is an artificial construct. Gaia has consciousness and life, and the physical is real. Yeah, to me, so the Gnostics, to sum up, the Gnostics say that the world is illusionary, right? And so the Hindus say this as well. The world is illusion. Brahman, or universal consciousness, alone is real. That would be, it's actually the step beyond Sophia. I think it's the monad is the universal consciousness. I think they call it the monad, if I remember correctly, in Gnostic theology. There's Sophia, which begat the Beloth, which then creates the physical world, right? What I don't like about Gnosticism is I don't like dark Gnosticism. And what I mean by that is, it's possible that if there is a demiurge, then my contention would be that the demiurge changes based on where we are in our state of consciousness, based on where we are in the yugas. And so therefore the demiurge for a Bronze Age gives Bronze Age experiences, a demiurge for Silver Age experience, Golden Age experience. And when you're in the Kali Yuga, the demiurge would seem kind of like a horribly evil god, right? If it's creating the material of mankind and it's horrible and torturous, then it's understandable why you would say the Lord of the illusion that creates this illusionary world that's so awful must itself be evil, right? So that's Mara or Maya or the demiurge, right? Or Yaldabaoth, or however the hell you say it, that the Gnostic Christians say. So the Hindus say the world is illusion, Brahman alone is real, but then there's this key third statement. The world is Brahman. So Brahman is universal consciousness. The world is Brahman. So to me, that's what releases the burden of the other two, and also the trap of getting stuck in the witnessing. Most people aren't aware that the world is illusionary or a dream. There's another way of putting it. The modern thing they try and talk about with archaics and others, it's a simulation, right? Which is just the dead materialist explanation of Gnosticism. Whereas it's much richer and fuller to say that everything exists within consciousness, the mind of God, right? So there's other people who say everything is sacred. Everything is super, it's so real, bro, and it's sacred, right? The sacramentalists. And so a lot of like Orthodox Christians say this is all real and it's all sacred, right? It's all very real, and but it's also sacred. Well, I call myself a Gnostic sacramentalist. I believe that it is all an illusion. The world is illusion. Brahman alone is real. There's only the mind of God, within which is big G God, not Most High or Shiva or Parvati or any of these Thor, not small G gods. Whether even the Most High and the Moloch are both small G gods. The ultimate creator God, which is beyond good and evil, big G God, that is clearly consciousness, and that alone is real. That's all true. But the world was created by this being. Do it for no reason to yank or chain? No, there's a purpose to it, and that purpose is clearly very sacred and very holy. And I believe it's just the evolution of consciousness. It's summed up in the story of the prodigal son in the Bible. You go out into the world, you have all these carnal material experiences, and then you want to come back to source. And one of the ways to do that is the non-dual consciousness enlightenment. You can also do it through the devotion. They have different paths in yoga. They have one of them is the path, I think it's called Bhakti, the path of devotion. And so you can be super intensely devoted to the Guru or to Jesus, right? To Yeshua. Someone who surrenders fully to Jesus, who Jesus is deity, right? It's been deified here on earth. So he's way beyond a demigod. He's one of the most potent and powerful small G gods on earth. And I know it's going to make the Christians super angry, and I accept this is just my conception. I'm not telling you need to have this. And if you want to believe that Jesus is the light and the truth and the way, it's not going to hurt you. It's great. It's a bhakti path to liberation. It's fantastic. You get in alignment with the Most High. You're super loving to everyone. You love that neighbor as yourself. You won. Like, it doesn't matter. That's the game you're playing. You won. It is the right move. 100% is the right move. It's just not the right move for me, and that's where we might disagree. So for me, and my conception is he is at that level, and so those are not the being that is the one singular being that contains all the good and evil. That's just pure consciousness, and within that consciousness form arises. And so this is real in the sense that you should live it as though it's real, but with the consciousness that it's also illusion, but that it's also sacred. And if you do that, it gives you it allows you to step back and not get sucked into material consciousness to a level to where you're going to get frightened and maybe rageful and maybe hurt and kill people or do other things because you're taking this world way too seriously. And not in a good, you're not taking it seriously like in a loving way of let's be here to have beautiful, wonderful experiences and be harmonious and loving to one another, which is clearly the purpose of this place, right? It's like, oh my God, fearful, and I have to just be money grubbing and screw people over and whatever. No, you can be loving and exist within this world and have that level of detachment that comes with knowing it's illusion, knowing that you're an immortal spirit that's going to reincarnate. It's actually very liberating, and it will make you behave good if you prefer and you wish to surrender fully to Jesus and act like as Jesus did. Fantastic. That's like the best thing you could do. I would never dissuade anyone from that. But for people like me that doesn't resonate, I'm simply giving a different explanation that perhaps might. Sedona Fred said, The Keys of Enoch by Dr. J.J. Hurtak is a spiritual scientific book, not magic. Okay, interesting. Hey, Ian, where to meet like-minded people? Bar has not been fruitful, LOL. Since you're an ex-Angelic Magic class student, join that server that Grant sent out the email about. That would be what I would say. If you're looking for ladies, though, that would not be the place to go. It's there's like 1 or 2 women who have been Angelic Magic students, and it's been mostly men. A couple more women are signing up now, but it's been mostly men. So if you mean meeting like-minded people, that's a great place to start. If you mean meeting like-minded women, not the place to go. I like that phrase, the mind of God. Yeah, awesome. Bhakti Raja Thomas. Huh. I think you're thinking of Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic, and those are the 3 qualities or whatever. So it's not Bhakti. It's Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic is what I think you're thinking of there. Bhakti is just devotional. I don't think that those two, the other forms of Bhakti yoga is devotional yoga, and I forget what the other forms are. One of them is Jnana, the path of knowledge. So like just that's what Ramana Maharshi teaches. That's a non-dual path to enlightenment. And then there's a few more as well. And Sattvic. Okay. Well, yeah. So Rajasic, Tamasic. Rajasic is like sensual and also rage, and Tamasic is like downward consciousness and becoming more and more zombie-like, and Sattvic is spiritually uplifting. So Tamasic, like Moloch's very Tamasic with some Rajasic, and you could say Lucifer is Rajasic and somewhat Sattvic, and then the Most High is pure Sattvic. Very insightful that people should avoid materialism when we are immortal and should not fear transition. Yeah, and I mean, like, I just see it as like if we all had an attitude of that this place is where we're supposed to have a playful, harmonious, loving interaction with each other, the world would look very different than if we're hyper-focused on the material. But we also can't ignore the material, right? Like we have to like make sure that we're loving our neighbor as thyself. You know, that's part of why I have segued my life into worshiping the Most High, working with the angels, and working with that polarity, that frequency, because I'm kind of iconoclastic, and the great bulk of the world has been my entire life has been Malachian consciousness, and then a lot of mentors or people I liked or just uplifting things in life were either more often Luciferian in character, right, teaching intellectual things or whatever, meritocracy, liberty, concepts of liberty, freedom of speech, things like that, and then the really uplifting spiritual stuff has been more like the Most High. And so, yeah, and I don't see any conflict between my beliefs and what Christians believe. I think it's very, very similar. The difference is that I don't have the same narrowness, but the goal is the same, that we want to be very loving and like, you know, be hope. The goal should be to be like Yeshua. Yeshua is very much a messenger of the Most High, like came here to teach people how to live and how to be loving to one another, and offered us a very real bhakti devotional path of spiritual liberation through him. It doesn't, for whatever reason, it doesn't resonate with me. I was raised Christian, always loved Jesus, Yeshua. I also just prefer the term Yeshua because I've now seen some stuff that makes it sound like the letter J is a later addition and that it's kind of bad news and that maybe we should just say Yeshua instead of Jesus. And I tend to agree with that line of thinking. Well, it is after 10 p.m. And so Happy New Year's to all the people who've had a New Year's thing, but I want to spend some time with my son and just have some family time before New Year's. So any last questions before I go? I would like to wrap up here in the next 5 or 10 minutes, or even nowish if we don't have any more questions. All right, well, it's looking like there's not really any more questions, so thank you so much, everyone. So glad you could be here. I'm going to try, keyword, to tomorrow release a short, like 40-minute video where I, or maybe even 25-minute video where I explain the prophecies that the virtues gave me to share. It kind of makes more sense to do it on first day of New Year's and with Mercury being prograde. So moving forward with information for the year, I like it symbolically better. Take a moment tonight and, you know, throw an I Ching or draw tarot cards or, you know, meditate or pray or whatever, and just see what comes to you in that moment. And what comes to you in that moment, or what you see in fractal form, whether you're literally reading the tea leaves or you're throwing the I Ching, you know, hexagram, or you're drawing tarot cards, or praying, or however you want to do that, it can give you, if you tune in carefully, it can give you information about the year to come. And I plan to do a tarot pull. Every tarot pull I've ever done that I do right near New Year's is fire, including I pulled it in 2020, and I was like, hey, that looks horrific. And then I pulled it in 2021, and I was like, that looks mostly really bad with some slight goodness at the very end. And then 2022 I pulled it and it was fantastic. 2022 to 2022 I pulled it and it was fantastic and it was good. And then last year I pulled it for 2023 and it was fantastic and very on point and specific. And so I'm very excited to pull the cards tonight and see what they have to say. I already know some stuff for personal and broadly speaking, but I'm very curious to see what the cards say. So Merry Christmas, everyone, and have a wonderful Merry Christmas. Well, late Merry Christmas, and have a Happy New Year, and much love to everyone. Let's see what Alex says before I go. Right, sorry, Bhakti, Nana, Karma, Demotion, Intellect, Booty, Good Works, Action. Yeah, got this mixed up with the 3 gunas. Exactly. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word gunas. Correct. Yeah, and I forget what the Good Works, Action is. That's exactly right. Yeah, Devotion, Nana, Karma. Is Karma yoga? I think that's I think you're just directly working on the karma, but the yeah, I always forget how that one works. That one really interests me. Yeah, Good Work Actions, awesome. Yep, Happy New Year. All right, much love, everyone, and there's cool number 23, so I'm going to end the stream. Catch y'all later. Catch you on the flip side next year. Bye.